to the LIHEAP webinar on safer, more efficient wood stove heating and LIHEAP. My name is Benita Sinaraja, and I will be your moderator from the contracted LIHEAP Technical Assistance Team at Brilliant. Today, we have a variety of speakers, and just as a general reminder, I want to remind everyone that today's call is being recorded, and we will have it posted at a later date on the LIHEAP OCS website. So if you miss anything today, don't worry, we are going to record it, and we will have it posted on the website for anyone to access, especially if anyone on your team couldn't get a chance to join today, they'll be able to access it later. So as you can see on our agenda, we have a lot of people and a lot of different perspectives that we're going to hear from today. Before I get to that, I just want to go over a little housekeeping with everyone. You are currently all in listen-only mode. After dialing into the webinar, you should have entered in your access code and audio pin, which are located on your control panel. And your control panel is on the right-hand side of your screen. It's important that you enter in that audio pin, as that enables me, as your moderator, to unmute your line so that way you can speak on the call later. When it's time for the question and answer section, which we're going to save for the end of today's presentation, you may enter your question into the question box on your control panel, or you can click on the little raised hand icon. So there's a little tiny button in that control panel that looks like a hand. If you just click on that, we'll know you have a question to ask, okay? And as I've mentioned, we're going to wait till the end after all of our presenters to go through Q&A. Before I turn it over to our first speaker, we're actually going to ask everyone a couple poll questions just to kind of get a lay of the land of who's on today. So our first poll question I'll pull up. We'd like to know if you represent a tribal government, a state or local government, a federal government, nonprofit, or another group. And so just if you can just select one, the poll question should be up on your screen for you to see. And you can just select that, and we'll leave it open for a few more seconds to allow everybody to vote. And it looks like everybody is voting very quickly. Thank you so much for that participation. We'll leave it open for just a few more seconds. Okay. So as you can see on the call today, we have a predominant, about half of you are from state or local government, which is great. We have another quick question. And this is predominantly about your work. If you can let us know, does most of your work relate to housing, health, air quality, energy, or perhaps more than one above? If you can just choose one of those options, that'll help us know kind of what your work really predominantly pertains to. We'll just leave it for a few more seconds for everyone to answer. All right, looks like we have a vast majority have voted. Okay, so we're kind of split. A lot of attendees today on the webinar are working with air quality or energy, or perhaps both of those at once. Not as many housing or health specifically today. So good to know. All right, well, thanks so much for answering those questions. We're actually going to have a few more questions on the call today, so stay tuned for that. And we do ask that you stay till the end of the session today, because we are going to have some poll questions again at the end as well. So next, I want to turn it over to Yulia Razad, who many of you know. She's an Energy Assistance Policy Specialist from the Office of Community Services within the Administration for Children and Families. And Yulia is going to provide us just with a short introduction and overview of LIHEAP, just to kind of set the stage. So Yulia, take it away.
With the Office of Community Services in the Administration for Children and Families within the Department of Health and Human Services. and we administer the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program. Normally, we don't do much of a LIHEAP overview because our webinars are targeted to our LIHEAP grantees. This webinar is a little different. The EPA invited many of their stakeholders to this webinar, so for their benefit, I'd like to do a brief overview of LIHEAP, what it is, and what it's all about. So the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, which is known as LIHEAP, is a federally funded program that helps low-income households manage their home energy bills. And LIHEAP funds can be used for several purposes, primarily for payment assistance with home heating or home cooling bills, assistance during energy crises, and funding for weatherization and home energy-related equipment repair and replacement. Next slide. The primary goals of LIHEAP are to provide the highest level of assistance to people with the lowest income relevant to household size and those who have the greatest home energy costs or needs. Ultimately, the purpose of LIHEAP is to reduce health and safety risks related to inadequate home heating and cooling. So LIHEAP is a program that is designed for the low-income community, and it is all about how people who are low-income live in their homes and to make sure that those homes are safe and healthy and have adequate heating and cooling so that they're not too cold or too hot. Next slide, please. LIHEAP is a federal block grant, and the words block grant have very specific definition in the world of federal grant management. A block grant means that funding for LIHEAP is allocated by the federal government based on a formula. So it's not a grant where you apply for a certain amount and you get that amount because that's how much you asked for. Everything is based on a very complex formula. And a block grant also allows grantees a lot of flexibility when it comes to designing and administering their programs. We have very few specific black and white rules, and a lot of the discretion in terms of how a program is run is left to be determined by the grantee. Next slide, please. So as I said, you have a great degree of discretion as a LIHEAP grantee. You can choose whether or not to provide energy equipment repair and replacement associated with heating or cooling. That means a grantee has the option to provide services around repairing or replacing a furnace, or repairing or replacing an air conditioner, or repairing and replacing a wood stove. Grantees can use some or all of the Department of Energy Weatherization Assistance Program rules when implementing their own weatherization assistance programs that are funded by LIHEAP. And grantees have the flexibility in terms of the types of services that they offer, the maximum value for those services, the standards that those services must meet, and the methods by which they monitor the fulfillment of those standards. Grantees are able to decide if they want to provide weatherization services to a maximum of $2,000 or $7,000 or $10,000. They have the ability to decide whether or not to just do equipment repair and replacement or to do that in conjunction with weatherization. They have a lot of responsibilities because of this flexibility. So whatever rules and standards they set for themselves, they're also responsible for ensuring that those standards are met. So while grantees have a lot of flexibility, they also have a great level of responsibility for assuring that standards are met. And now I'm going to hand it over to Benita, who will introduce our next speaker.
Thanks so much, Julia. So our first speaker today is going to be Larry Brockman, and I just wanted to give you all a brief background on Larry. He's a graduate of Indiana University School of Public and Environmental Affairs and has worked with the EPA for over 20 years. Larry worked 6 years in the EPA Region 10 in the Seattle office, splitting his time between the region's water program and the tribal program. And Larry moved to North Carolina in 1997 and now works for the EPA's Office of Air Quality and Planning Standards in Research Triangle Park in North Carolina. He's the EPA's National Residential Wood Smoke Reduction Initiative team lead, and that initiative includes EPA's voluntary fireplace program, support for wood-burning appliance incentive change-out projects, and the BurnWise education campaign. So over the last 10 years, Larry has worked in partnership with state, local, and tribal governments, other federal agencies, the hearth industry, and nonprofit organizations on dozens of wood-burning appliance replacement projects aimed at upgrading old, dirty, inefficient wood stoves and fireplaces with more energy efficient and clean burning appliances. And more recently, Larry and the EPA's wood smoke team have focused on increasing awareness about the health effects of wood smoke and best wood burning practices, including the use of wood moisture meters. So before I turn it over to Larry to take it over, I want to run through a couple more poll questions with everybody just to kind of see where you're all familiar with this topic. So let me pull up our next question. So this is a quick one, and we just want to know if you're familiar with different types of stoves, such as the EPA certified wood stoves, the pellet stoves, or the gas stoves. So just yes, no, or if you're not sure, just let us know. It's all totally anonymous, by the way. It looks like we have about half the group that voted. We'll just leave it open for another few seconds. Okay, I'll close that poll. All right, it looks like the vast majority of the attendees today are familiar with these different types of stoves, so that's great. And I'll just ask one more question to everyone. And this is definitely one where you want to pick all that apply. So for this question, we wanted to know which of these activities are you, your organization, or your tribe already doing with LIHEAP funding? And that would be wood stove changeouts and replacements, ensuring that cordwood is low moisture, seasoned, providing pellets or briquettes, wood stove maintenance or chimney cleaning, or any weatherization and energy efficiency activities. And again, as a reminder, go ahead and choose all that apply for this one. I'll give everybody a little extra time to complete this question. Looks like we've got about half the group that's responded so far. And I really appreciate everyone's participation in these polls. It's really helpful to kind of get an idea about the audience and what you're familiar with and how this presentation can kind of help what you're looking for. So it looks like almost everyone has voted. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and show those results. So this is great. With a lot of the LIHEAP funding that you or your organization or tribe may already be receiving, a lot of people are doing a lot of work around weatherization, energy efficiency, definitely some wood stove changeouts. It's a nice mix across the board. So this will be really helpful information. All right. With that, I am going to change the presenter rights over to Larry and let him take it away.
All right, Benita, am I in the right screen or?
I think you just need to move ahead a couple slides.
All right.
We can see your screen though.
Okay, great.
I think if you want to just
All
move
right,
the slide
there I
forward,
am.
you'll be perfect.
Okay. All right. Again, my name is Larry Brockman, and I'm grateful to be with you today. In addition to working with EPA on wood smoke, I've also had personal experience with heating with wood for the last almost 10 years. Once had an old uncertified wood stove, and I've had a couple EPA-certified wood stoves, an insert, a freestanding stove, a gas appliance at one time or another. So I have some practical experience I'll show, also with managing wood and using wood stoves. But today I'm going to go through why we care about residential wood smoke, talk about some of the appliances. It sounds like most folks are familiar with the various appliances, so that's good, so I won't spend as much time on that. And then outline various options for reducing wood smoke. There's a lot of slides for the next 20 minutes. I'm going to go through them quite quickly, but I think it'll be good for a good resource for you to refer back to a lot of these slides. So first, what's in wood smoke? The perception it's a sweet smell of wood smoke, but Unfortunately, wood smoke has a lot of different compounds, chemicals, pollutants, carbon monoxide, volatile organic compounds, particle pollution or fine particles, toxic pollutants including benzene, toluene, aldehyde gases including formaldehyde, and polycyclic organic matter. We're particularly concerned with fine particle pollution, in particular as it relates to wood smoke. Particles in wood smoke can impact health. A lot of people aren't familiar with the impacts on the heart and increased risk of heart attack, heart failure, stroke, and early death even. Of course, lung impacts from breathing wood smoke include asthma attacks and can aggravate lung diseases and damage children's lungs. Those that are at the greatest risk are the older adults, elders, children, and then really people with pre-existing conditions. Here's a chart that shows that over 70% of those people surveyed by the Tribal Healthy Homes Network did not realize that wood smoke and the associated pollutants can cause cancer, heart attacks, and strokes. So I think that's a good sign for us that a lot of education really needs to be done out there to educate people about the risks of wood smoke and exposure to wood smoke. One of the realities with wood smoke is that we have low stacks compared to, say, factories, plants, power plants. The stacks are relatively low during the winter time. Oftentimes we have poor dispersion from wintertime inversions, which can mean high exposure and can impact our neighbors and the community. And it of course impacts both indoors and outdoor pollution. But the low stacks and poor dispersion is definitely sets up the opportunities for high exposure in communities. In terms of smoky fires really can be very costly, and smoky fires oftentimes is a result of wet wood, which leads to poor combustion, low heat fires. And what that means is that we're going to need to burn more wood, valuable resource to keep the houses warm. The smoky fires and costly fires from the potential health impacts that it can have on people in the community or in the house. And then can be costly from the chimney. There's risk of chimney fire from creosote buildup in the chimney. And so what happens is wood smoke goes up into the chimney, it cools down and condenses, and it essentially attaches itself to the chimney and builds up until a flame could start the fire. So there's a real health and safety issue related to chimney fires there. We'll look at some of the appliances real quickly. Uncertified wood stoves, those that are typically built before 1990, they're essentially mostly really have no control technology, no technology to help them burn efficiently. They're metal boxes essentially, and just are not particularly efficient at burning wood. Other appliances include the fireplaces, manufactured fireplaces and masonry fireplaces. Those are not regulated by EPA. Wood stoves are. And fireplaces are certainly not efficient heaters. Unfortunately, there are some people that do try to heat their homes with fireplaces, and it ends up taking a lot of wood and a lot of effort, a lot of time and effort. So we try to discourage people from using fireplaces. And then there are outdoor wood boilers or outdoor hydronic heaters, which is a much larger stove that are designed to heat water and then pump it back into the house and to use to heat the home or hot water for radiant heat, for instance. And these particular units have an ability to emit a lot of smoke and cause a lot of localized problems for the community. For those that are familiar with them, they know that they've been problematic for the last probably 7 to 10 years in particular, much more popular than they were 20 years ago. Other appliances include coal burning stoves. Particularly, you can see these stoves are, the one on the right is obviously a homemade stove, which is not uncommon to see in some communities. These stoves have a very difficult time in burning bituminous and sub-bituminous coal. It can be particularly dirty. And then there are definitely studies out there that documented the indoor air quality problems and outdoor with burning coal in homes, and certainly can emit dangerous toxic pollutants, including not just fine particles. And we'll move on to the EPA certified stoves. You can see there's two freestanding stoves, and then one is the fireplace wood stove insert. What makes these burn cleaner, I guess, is what a lot of people ask the question, what makes a certified stove certified? Some stoves use a catalyst to burn off the pollutants. When the pollutants are burned off, this releases the BTUs, the energy. Essentially, once the catalyst is heated up to a certain temperature, it then becomes the tool, the mechanism for essentially burning off the pollutants and emitting energy instead of wood smoke. And cat stoves are not as popular as the secondary combustion stoves. Probably 15 to 20% stoves are sold these days today as are catalytic stoves. The majority of EPA certified stoves are non-cat or secondary combustion stoves. And to get good combustion, you really need a well-insulated firebox with a secondary combustion stove. You also need high temperature in the firebox, and that's what the insulation does. There's a refractory brick inside that helps increase the temperature. And then there are places within the stove, and you can see on the left the diagram shows how air is brought into the stove. It's preheated and then put into the stove at key locations. And the idea is with the secondary combustion stove, you're really burning off the gases, not the wood. So after you get the temperature in the firebox high enough, you can shut down the air. The gases from the wood literally go up to the top of the firebox, and you see those tubes, and there's air then pushed in there, and essentially combustion takes place, and the gases then get burned up in the firebox, and that would be considered a non-cat or a secondary combustion stove. Then we have EPA certified wood pellets, and EPA updated our regulations related to wood burning wood heaters this past May, and now all wood pellet stoves need to be EPA certified. And pellet stoves are typically much cleaner burning than a wood stove, and a lot less work. You don't have to split, stack, cover, and move your wood, and it's a good option really for someone that's getting older and maybe having a tough time handling wood. And as mentioned earlier, I believe LIHEAP funds can be used for paying for the pellets. So this is certainly one option, and some of the stoves will accept corn also. The next, perhaps the cleanest option of all, is moving from an old wood stove to a natural gas stove. And they look a lot like a real wood stove, but by far the cleanest and most efficient and very convenient, and a great option, probably the best option, again, for someone who perhaps is unable to manage wood any longer. A good clean option, and certainly can get great indoor air quality benefits and health and safety from the standpoint of not having to worry about fire safety issues and indoor air quality problems. So let's move and go over, I'm going to go over some of these other, just briefly anyway, weatherization, energy efficiency, the importance of education and outreach, some fuel options for cleaner burning, and then talk about the importance of installation, ventilation, operation, maintenance, and then wood stove, wood burning appliance change-out replacement programs. First, we'll start with the general concept of a change-out program. Is really it's an incentive-based and education-based program where we're trying to encourage people to move from an old technology wood stove to a cleaner burning appliance that's going to be safer and healthier across the board, to gas, to wood pellets, EPA certified gas furnaces, heat pumps. And I've seen incentive programs where they give as little as, say, a few $100s for replacement to incentivize someone to move to a cleaner technology, to the full replacement, which could be certainly, $3,000, $4,000 for even more depending on the type of appliance that you're going to replace it with. Partnerships are really key with these programs, and working with the different HVAC and hearth industry and other partners to market the program and get additional support and resources. Wanted to share with you an example of a before and after example where you have the old stove on the left, and you can notice the soot on the baseboards, the creosote running down the wall, clearly both a health and safety issue from an exposure to wood smoke for the family, fire risks associated with this, and then moving to an EPA certified wood stove. And this is not going to solve all the problems of moving to the stove. You also have to make sure that the person then with this new stove is burning dry seasoned wood and operating the stove properly. Those are really important aspects of burning wood, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. Another example would be going from a wood stove to a high efficiency appliance, a gas stove, uncertified on the left, over to the gas stove insert. Again, a high efficiency, cleaner burning, and very convenient appliance as an option. Now this chart shows that the pounds of fine particles, particle pollution emitted based on the amount of BTUs given off. And you can see that fireplaces are the dirtiest based on the amount of BTUs or energy that they provide to the home. And then gas is the most energy efficient and the cleanest. Next, we'll go through the importance of wood moisture and wood sheds, and a little bit on other fuels, but you'll hear from Susan Two-Eagle on some of the other fuels in a minute. First, on the wood moisture and the importance of wood moisture, you can see that the amount of water in unseasoned and freshly cut wood. This is 43 pounds of green sugar maple, and there's like 2 gallons of water in the wood. And of course, what do we use to put out fires? Water. So how do we get that water out of the wood? It's really important that we split, stack, cover, and store the wood, that we allow enough time for it to dry. Softwoods may take 6 months, hardwoods may take 12 months, and it really depends on what part of the country you're in, your humidity, your temperature, the size of the piece of wood that's been cut and split. But splitting your wood is very important, and then making sure that there's airflow and to allow it to dry out. So then, looking at what's the right moisture for burning wood, dry wood is considered around 20% moisture content. And on the right here, you see someone testing the wood moisture, and it's a simple task and with a wood moisture meter of simply, first you got to split the wood, a newly split side, and then you stick the wood moisture meter into the wood, and you get, on many of them, a digital reading, and that will give you an indication of the wood moisture content. But again, it's really important that you split the wood. Here's an example of some wood that I'd split at my home. Well, I tested first before splitting it. I kind of looked at the wood and thought, oh, I wonder what the wood moisture is. I checked the outside, and it was 19%. But when I split the wood and tested it, it was actually 37%, which tells me it is not ready to be burned. Now, one thing I do want to point out that typically, you do want to 20% moisture content is good because it doesn't burn too fast. The fire won't get too hot. The wood won't burn too fast. But you can have too dry of wood where it just burns too hot too fast, and it's a waste of energy, and you could even damage the stove. Typically, that's not a problem, the too dry, but it is something to be conscious of. So there's other ways to reduce, the issue of wet wood and wood smoke and addressing those potential health and safety concerns in a home that's burning wet wood, and that is by encouraging in the community people to build wood sheds. And on our website, we have specifications, designs for that you could just pull off and use in the community. And my understanding is that LIHEAP funds could potentially be used for even providing wood sheds to the clients. And then one other option here is looking at low moisture fuels, briquettes, and fire logs. I think Susan is going to speak to this in more detail, but in a nutshell, you have these briquettes and fire logs. It's important that you look at all natural compressed ones, no additives. And the key is these are really, in not simple terms, compressed sawdust with low moisture content, and they can produce a lot of heat and burn very efficiently. And you do need to be a little careful that you don't put too many of these in a wood stove, because they can get too hot and potentially damage your stove. But Susan will talk more about this later. So other factors to reduce wood smoke, certainly weatherization of the homes, weather stripping, caulking, insulating, upgrades. The demand of the house is less fuel, regardless of it's wood or gas, and that's certainly an important aspect of trying to reduce wood smoke if you're burning wood, is to use less of it. The other important aspects include proper appliance installation. We recommend EPA a certified professional. We talked about proper operation with the dry season wood, but certainly to make sure you provide sufficient air to the fire. We think of whenever we maybe are trying to get a fire started, say a campfire, we blow on the fire and it starts up. And the same with a wood stove, you need sufficient air to keep the fire going. So dampering down is oftentimes harmful to the fire and just creates smoke and no energy. Proper ventilation is really key. The annual chimney inspection, along with annual inspections on wood stove maintenance. Talk a little bit more about wood stove maintenance. Some of the things that are looked at are the gaskets around the door, fire brick we mentioned earlier, making sure that those aren't broken. The secondary combustion tubes can get burned out in the secondary combustion technology stoves. And then catalyst, if it's a catalytic stove, those too can go bad over years, or if someone puts trash in the stove, that could damage the catalyst. So those are some of the basic maintenance that is looked at on a wood stove. And then proper ventilation and chimney care is really critical also. The chimney, the flue is the engine that really drives the entire burning process with a wood stove. And it's important that the chimney is meant to draw air and smoke and pollution out of the home. Unfortunately, we oftentimes see in some of the studies that have been done, particularly by the University of Montana, that people oftentimes are opening their doors in the wood stoves and smoke is coming back into the house and exposing people, and that partly can be due with improper ventilation and chimney care. So that's an important aspect, is to look at how your chimney is working, and water can certainly degrade mortar in the chimney, so it's important to have it inspected and the chimney swept on a regular basis. Okay, so then additional assistance to help reduce wood smoke and things that you can do in your community is to certainly encourage the how-tos, how to build hot fires, and provide advice on weatherization. How to use wood moisture meters is really important, and carbon monoxide detectors, and then again the how-to dry and store wood. There's a lot of outreach and education. I think that's really critical to when we're talking about people using wood as a source of heat. So some of the tools, and I'm about finished here. Outreach tools. EPA has a lot of outreach tools available to you on our website, our BurnWise website. We have brochures, fact sheets, videos, lots of these, and posters. And most everything we have copies that are available for free. So feel free to contact me if you're interested in brochures and fact sheets and posters. One of our most popular brochures is the Wet Wood as a Waste Split Stack Cover Store brochure. That if you're interested in that, again, they're available for free, and you can contact us and we'll send you some. One last resource I wanted to mention is the Tribal Healthy Homes Network website. Has a lot of great information out there for improving air quality indoors and out, and it's really meant for anybody and everybody, and not just tribes, but lots of good tools and information there that I wanted to make sure people are aware of. And then to summarize, really we're looking at wood smoke, and wood stoves can be a health and safety issue, certainly, and we want to make sure that we want to raise awareness about the options for addressing these various issues. EPA has a lot of outreach tools and experience to share as it relates to implementing programs, and we're always available to try to consult and provide resources. And then LIHEAP has funds that are flexible to help address your particular challenges, and I think that's the reason we're having this webinar, is to raise awareness about the tools and opportunities to address your issues. So I guess I'll just wrap up and say thank you for the time here, and feel free to contact me directly for any assistance that you may need in the future. All right, I think now I change this back over to
Thanks, Larry. And while Larry's changing it back over to my screen, I just want to, well, first of all, thank you, Larry, for all that really helpful information. And then also, if you've got some burning questions about LIHEAP funding, after we hear from two of our awesome tribal presenters, we are going to turn it back over to Yulia, and she's going to cover some of the LIHEAP funding information so you can kind of bring it all together. But with that, let me introduce our two speakers. Our first one's going to be Susan Chu Eagle from the Oglala Sioux Tribe. She is the LIHEAP director over there. They're on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation for land-based, challenging 2.1 million acres, and their reservation is very rural, and most communities are isolated from any real infrastructure. So this is a really important job for her, and she became the LIHEAP director in 2011, and during her tenure, she's made a lot of substantial changes to cost effectiveness and improved the strategic planning and the assistance that they provide. So the improvement of services to the low-income vulnerable families has been really beneficial to the people of the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. So we really look forward to hearing Susan's perspective. And then our second speaker today will be Dorothy Palmer from the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation. She's the LIHEAP program manager over there within the Health and Human Service Department for the Colville Tribes in Washington State. And she's been working for the tribe since May of 1980, and also manages the tribe's USDA food distribution program, food bank, food voucher, tribal senior heating assistance, and the BPA weatherization program. She's been a tribal presenter at the National LIHEAP Conference and is on the board of directors for a local electric cooperative. She has 4 children, 2 stepchildren, which they raise on their ranch in Washington, and she enjoys all of her family time spent with them, for 13 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. Pretty cool. So with that, I want to turn it over to Susan, and let me open up your line, Susan. Susan, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Great. All right. We'll take it away.
Okay. Good afternoon to everyone that is participating. I'm kind of nervous, but I'm also excited about this webinar. What I'd like to talk about a little bit is the history of the program. I believe that's like the next slide. Okay. When I came on as the LIHEAP director in 2011, it was quite interesting. I didn't realize, as a tribal member, I've never really participated in the program. Of course, I was never eligible for it, but I was always heard about it. And when I became the director, it was really, I kept thinking of the ways that I can better serve the people of the reservation, you know, that were in dire need and that are the lowest or like impoverished people or the natives here. And so it was a real challenge. And one of the biggest challenges, I guess, was when we go out into the districts, and our reservation is quite large. And we talked about, I realized that some of my friends growing up were wood vendors. And they would come up and say, well, I'd like to be a wood vendor, but I'm having a hard time finding wood, you know. And so I realized that that was going to be a challenge. And when we were introduced to the idea of the eco-friendly briquettes, I did a lot of, we talked a lot about the company that sold them, and he gave us a lot to pass out to have the people try. And from the feedback, it was really good because, a lot of people were, they're elders, people that live like in a country and that have to go out and get the wood and store it and everything. But the biggest challenge here was we live in the plains area. We don't live in a wooded, where there's a lot of pine, a lot of wood. So that was one of the biggest challenges. And therefore, when I found out about the briquettes, it was really striking, and I thought, wow, this is interesting, and I want to, let the people try it to see if they like it. And so far, all the people that have tried it are, really like it because they never thought that they'd ever have a briquette that is so small and easy to store and all of that available. Go ahead to the next slide. And the people that burn wood here on the reservation are, of course, the elderly people that live way out in the country, and they're also handicapped. A lot of them are single parents. They don't have the means to, go and get wood themselves. So it's really interesting for them to, have it available the way that it is. And it's a lot of people that we serve, don't have a means to come to Pine Ridge where our office is located. It's kind of we're located in the southwestern corner of the state, and it takes 2 hours to get from one side of the reservation to the other. And so it's quite interesting how our people manage to get around on the reservation to do their business. But we, once they're interested, we work with some of the tribal programs to deliver it to their homes, or we manage to get it to them. And the biggest thing, I guess, that was striking was that we have the Native people here we have a high rate of diabetes, children and people with asthma. And after they burned the briquettes, then they liked it because it didn't give off some of the emissions that the wood usually And so it was really, I mean, it was, you know, it was beneficial to the population that we serve. Next slide. And when we, after we tried the briquettes, we found that it was interesting, and one instance to the cord of wood that that usually the amount that we have to, when we give out wood or cord of wood, I mean, there's quite a lot, and it's kind of hard for elders and handicapped people to store it. And what we do, if they do want wood, is that the wood vendors would haul it to where they want it. We take some inside their house for them, and things like that. But with the briquettes, we could store more, like in their homes, in places where, you know, they could easily access it. And they found that it was a lot more. It's more efficient, easier to handle. It's a lot better. After they realized that how it burns and all of that, it was a whole lot. It was better. They liked it. Next slide. And this slide just gives a brief comparison to the wood burning versus the briquettes. And like I was just saying, that the briquettes they're easy to start, easy to store, and they're quite inexpensive. And they get more for their money, for their LIHEAP assistance. And most of all, it provides less of an impact on the environment. People aren't, you know, cutting down trees. That was the other big thing, was we found out that the tribe doesn't have a program here where we replenish the trees that are cut down, and so that was a big issue, and I felt kind of guilty, I guess, you know, having to we're always cutting the trees down, but nobody is replenishing them. And I know in the past, the Lakota College had a program that did that, but that program doesn't exist anymore. So if the landowners aren't doing it, then nobody is basically replenishing the trees here on the reservation. Next slide. Okay, so the cost effectiveness of the briquettes versus the burning the wood is the size of a cord. A cord of wood measures 4 feet in height by 4 feet wide, with each piece 16 inches long, just the average size. But the average cost varies from $250 up to $400 per cord here on the reservation. Whereas the briquettes come in a 1-ton pallet for easier storage and access, and it costs $160. And in that, the pallet, there's 82 packages, and each package weighs like 24 pounds. But once it's taken apart, then the briquettes are easier to handle. And if you're a person eligible for LIHEAP and choose wood, will get 1.5 quarts of wood. If someone chooses briquettes and would receive approximately 2 pallets, which is basically 2 tons of briquettes. And in our our office, we have a large garage where we would store them, and the company that we contract with, or that is our briquette vendor, they're located in Rapid City, South Dakota, and they have a contract here on the reservation where they collect pallets from some of the programs. So when they come down after the pallets, if we have a need for briquettes, they would bring us briquettes, then they would pick up the pallets. And that's kind of it's a cost saving overall, even for our program. We're not paying the mileage to bring them, and it just works out really nice. So, next slide. And this is a picture of what a cord of wood looks like versus a pallet of briquettes when it's packaged and stored. So people would get a cord and a half of wood, or if they decided to get briquettes, they would get 2 pallets. And so, you know, it's costing them less money to have, you know, to be warm longer, I guess. Next slide. And some of the results were that wood-burning homes have a heavy burden with a high cost of wood. And the briquettes offer a more sustainable source of heat, consistent heat for longer amounts of time. There's no bugs, there's no mess. They don't have to, if they're outdoors, they don't have to worry about any of that. And it provides minimal ash and reduced emissions that will benefit elders, young children, and people with asthma. And the briquettes are made up of 100% recycled. There's no additives. By utilizing briquette, it allows the natural habitat to replenish itself, which are the wood that we have on, or the timber that we have on the reservation. Next slide, please. Some of the partnerships that we created with in using the briquettes were that we were able to find out more with the people that burned wood. You know, we were able to find out, and after talking with, you know, Larry's presentation, it brings a lot more ideas, and I'm more curious and interested in, you know, finding out. And I doubt that a lot of our people have EPA-approved wood stoves, and now that really brings to mind that would be something for me to look into and to try to help the people that don't have EPA-approved wood stoves. And and like I said earlier, that we have here on one of the partnerships is that we have some of the programs on a reservation here that give, or whatever their relationship is with the company, is that it helps us to briquettes delivered to us at no cost when they're picking up the pallets. So that in itself is a really awesome deal. We didn't pay any, you know, mileage to the company to bring our pallets, and the only thing we do right now is we work with people that do use them and delivering to them. Town for other business, they'll stop in and stock up on their briquettes, or when we go out, we take them out and we get them to the people that need them. So that works out really well. Next slide, please. Some of the lessons that was learned throughout this whole process was that it was cost effectiveness on everybody's part, the company, and also the tribe, the LIHEAP program, the people that burn their burn wood to keep warm, and also that it was a supplement to the wood burning process. I believe there's a typo there, and that it allows the replenishing of the trees on the reservation that have been cut down, and that is friendlier to the environment, cleaner burn process, reduced emissions. People have alternative options to heating their home, and it's awesome. It's an awesome alternative way to have people, heat their homes. And now after this webinar, I have a lot of good ideas, and I'm going to look into kind of tweaking that whole idea of helping the people that have wood burning stoves to make it more safer. But that's all I have so far. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Susan. That was wonderful. We'll keep the ball rolling and turn it over to Dorothy. Make sure you're lined up in Dorothy.
Sure. Are you there?
Dorothy.
Can you hear me? Okay. Welcome, everybody, and I'm glad to hear we have over so many people on here. But I'm going to make a short presentation on wood stove changeouts and our wood distribution that we have going with our LIHEAP program. Next slide. Okay, a little bit of demos on our reservation over here. The size of our reservation is 1.4 million acres, about 21,000 square miles. And our reservation is located in the north central Washington part of our state. Our population is about 9,500 tribal members, with about 4,000 something that actually live on the reservation. The number of people or families that utilize LIHEAP is approximately 1,500 households. And the main source of home heating for these families is wood and electricity. We do have others that utilize wood pellets, propane, oil, but our main source of heat for our reservation is firewood and electricity. Next slide. We provide wood stove changeouts with our LIHEAP funds for low-income homeowners and renters. Are you still there?
Yep, Dorothy, we can hear you.
Okay, something happened here. Anyway, approximately $4,999 is our maximum that it takes to replace a stove. And we try not to exceed that dollar amount because there's so many requests here and our funds are short and whatever. But we usually cover 100% for our homeowners, and we cover 50% of the total cost for our renters. The landlords are responsible for the other 50% of the total cost. Next slide. Our wood stove vendors and maintenance. We utilize local vendors to provide our wood stove installations. It is beneficial to use our local vendors because they will provide warranty and maintenance repairs on the stoves installed and our chimneys. Next slide. We have been replacing wood stoves and fireplaces since about the early 1980s, and it averages about 20 wood stoves a year. So there's quite a few wood stoves that have been changed out, and some of them actually have come back through. And these are all EPA certified stoves. Next slide. Our wood field distribution. Eligible tribal members can choose one type of field assistance. They could choose wood, propane, oil, wood pellets to spend their LIHEAP dollars. And the majority of them are spending it on firewood. Okay, on our wood delivery efforts for the Colville tribe. Our program contracts with tribal members to cut and deliver the firewood. Our contract terms and conditions are very specific on the description of work required by the contractors. The contractors they provide all the equipment, labor, supervision, and supplies necessary to properly perform the firewood cutting delivery operations. And it's very specific in this contract on the tree selection, the type of wood to be cut. It states on there only dead trees will be cut for firewood, and we have western larch, tamarack, and Douglas fir trees to be cut. We don't cut any pines. The cut for firewood may only come from the area designated by BIA forestry, and that we have a lot of private lands that these firewood cutters cannot cut on, so they have to follow guidelines with the permit system out of BIA. Over to the left, I put on there, it's kind of a little bit blurry, but it's an invoice that we give to our wood contractor, and it has specific client information on there. It'll have their name, their address, their telephone number, how many cord of wood and the length of wood to be cut. And as you notice on there, a lot of these, there's like 3 little areas there. It says receive by, receive by. So the majority of our homes are receiving anywhere from 3 to 6 cord of firewood. And each time a delivery is made to the client's home, we need a received signature on that. And we have multiple checks in place to ensure that the firewood is cut to the specification, the quantity, and the quality is good, and the customer is happy. These invoices are then turned into our office for payment, and we are paying $180 a cord for firewood here. And the contract states we only pay 75% of the $180 a cord up front, and if they're all in line with their contract, there's no complaints on the quality and quantity of the wood that they received and how it's split up and whatever, they receive the final payment. Next slide. So the result of our full wood field distribution is about 50% of our families choose wood because it is their primary heat source, and using firewood cuts down on the cost of their electric heat. And then also families prefer to have wood delivered because they do not have the resources to cut their own wood, or they are not physically able to do so. Next slide. Our partnerships. We coordinate outreach efforts with other tribal and local county agencies to help advertise LIHEAP services, identify eligible families, and assist with distribution of applications. Some of our tribal programs are the Area Agency on Aging, our community centers. We have 4 of them in all our districts. We have 3 health clinics. We have tribal programs in each district, health programs. We have our tribal TANF program, social service programs. They all assist with distribution of our applications or going out to the homebound to help get these applications into us. And I think I forgot something here. The tribe waives the stumpage fee for the firewood contractors who are providing wood to our LIHEAP homes. Free use permits are given to these contractors, knowing that it goes to pay for the collection of field firewood to those in need. None of this wood is to be sold or exchanged for goods or services. We provide approximately 500 to 600 cord of firewood each year. And then many of the families maintain their own wood stoves by cleaning their stove pipes and chimneys themselves, which help keep these costs low. Other families we are helping under LIHEAP to help them maintain their stoves. We have a high rate of, oh, okay. Next slide. Our lessons learned. We use EPA certified wood stoves for cleaner burning processes, and it's reducing its emissions, and it's friendlier to the environment and also to some of the asthmatic and whatever families. We also are utilizing a tribal building permit, which is required before we go in and replace a wood stove. And this ensures that all the installs by the vendors are inspected for proper installation for safety inspection and their home insurance purposes. We use certified and bonder vendors and installers, and this is required by the tribal building codes in place. This ensures that the vendors agree to carry public liability insurance and indemnify and hold harmless the Colville tribe for any and all liability or loss arising in any way. The contractor hereby agrees to pay for any and all damage resulting from the stove installation. And I think that was very fast. And Benita, you have that.
Thanks so much, Dorothy. Well, let's take these great ideas and figure out how to pay for them. So I'll turn back over to Yulia to go over some LIHEAP funding information.
Thanks, Benita, and thank you to Larry and Susan and Dorothy for their wonderful presentations. So as I said earlier, LIHEAP funding has quite a bit of flexibility in how you can allocate your funds. But there are restrictions in the types of categories of LIHEAP funds and how much of your funding you can spend in those categories. There is a 10% cap for administrative costs. There is a 15% cap for weatherization activities, and something like a furnace repair replacement can be part of your weatherization activities. There is a 5% cap for activities related to energy education and case management. There is an allowance to carry over up to 10% of your funds for obligation in the next federal fiscal year. So if you get your money in one fiscal year, you have the option to obligate some of it the following year. And you are required to reserve a reasonable amount of funding for crisis through March 15th. Remaining funds must be allocated toward direct assistance, and this includes heating assistance, cooling assistance, in other words, helping to pay for energy bills associated with home heating and home cooling. Next slide. There is an annual application due September 1st. Entities that are available to, that are eligible to apply for LIHEAP include state, tribal, and territory governments, and also tribal organizations. Nonprofits or individuals or private businesses are not eligible to apply to receive a LIHEAP grant from our office. If you are a tribe and you want to apply to become a LIHEAP grantee, you have to be federally or state recognized in order to apply. And if you're state recognized, you have to provide that documentation. And level of funding for tribes, I mentioned earlier that overall funding for each grantee is based on a formula, and that's true for each state. There's a formula for how much funding a state receives. And then for tribes who apply, your funding is based on the proportion of income-eligible Native American households that reside within your service territory or your reservation as a percentage of the total number of income-eligible households in the entire state. If your service area crosses multiple states, we would do that calculation a little bit differently, but generally speaking, for example, if the state of California, that's where I'm from, so I was using them as an example, if the state of California gets $1,000 and your tribe has the Native American income eligible households in your reservation are 5% of the total income eligible population in the entire state, then you would get 5% of $1,000. So that's basically how it works, but the funding amount, $1,000, was just an example. Next slide. The application process is lengthy. This is not an easy fix. There are a lot of requirements and a lot of expectations of being a LIHEAP grantee. Too many to put at the tail end of just one little webinar. I can have a whole webinar just on application requirements and grantee expectations. So if you are new to LIHEAP and you're interested in possibly becoming a grantee, I encourage you to reach out to me directly, and we can have introductory and preliminary conversations one-on-one, so you can get a better sense of what the application process entails. And I think now we're going to do some closing poll questions.
Yeah. Well, first we're going to open the floor up for any questions that you all may have. So once again, I also want to thank all four of our speakers today, Julia, Susan, Dorothy, and Larry. They provided a lot of great information, and I know a couple of people have been patiently waiting to ask their questions. So I just want to remind everyone, if you would like to ask a question today, all you have to do is either click on the little raised hand icon in your control panel. That way I know that you would like to ask a question, and I can unmute your line and call on you to ask your question. If you'd also like to write in your question into the question box in the control panel, I can call on you that way as well. So let me just queue up our first few questions. Okay, and thank you to everybody who's been participating. This is great. And so if you'd like to ask a question to any of our speakers today, they're all available to help us out. So 1 second. Okay, our first question comes from John Ackerley, and since he has not put in his audio pin, so I'm going to read the question for everyone. And this is for any of our presenters today. He says, LIHEAP often replaces furnaces when the heat exchanger is cracked. What standards, if any, are recognized for when wood stoves are replaced?
That is a really great question. And the answer to that is it is up to each grantee to set those standards. There are some grantees that will replace a wood stove simply because it is not EPA certified, and they will replace it with an EPA certified stove. Other grantees require that the stove be non-functional or broken in some serious way before they replace it, but that is one of those block grant flexibilities that each grantee gets to make their own determination.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that.
Does Dorothy want to chip in on what their standard is, since they do some stove change-outs?
We change them out if there is a safety issue, efficiency issue with the wood stove.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Our next question comes from Alice Dam. Go ahead, Alice. Your line is unmuted if you'd like to ask your question now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I had marked to ask a question. I'm just finding this totally interested and very anxious to share with my co-staff. So I guess my question is, I do remember hearing this would be posted online later to use this webinar. Is that correct?
That is correct, and thank you for asking that. It's a great reminder to everyone. We are recording this session, and we will post it on the LIHEAP website for everyone to access. It'll probably be ready in a couple weeks, so it'll be ready, and you can listen to it whenever you'd like afterwards. All right. Thanks, Alice. All right. Our next question is from Spencer Ehrman, and again, I'll read his question for him. How do briquettes and wood compare for energy output? Will they work in certified wood stoves?
This is Larry Brockman. I can speak a little to that. Certainly, I think I've seen in some manufacturers of certain stoves recommend against using briquettes. Part of it is because, and I'm speculating here, but I think because they burn so efficiently and hold more BTUs compared to a piece of wood, regular cordwood or firewood, that they have the potential when, if you put too many logs, briquettes in the wood stove, the temperature in the firebox can get so hot that it could damage the EPA certified wood stove. But in general, because there's a lower moisture content and they're compressed, they're going to be, produce more BTUs compared to cordwood. And I think plain old firewood, as I believe Susan had alluded to in her conversation, her presentation, but she may want to add to that also.
Susan, did you want to add anything to Spencer's question? How do they compare for energy output?
Just basically what the people that did use them say was that it did give out, it burned longer, and that they didn't have to, keep adding wood. It just burned longer, and it was a little bit, stayed hotter longer basically, and they weren't having to always put the wood in. And so that's what I would like to add to it.
Okay, great, thank you. Our next couple of questions come from Louise Kattinger. And Louise, I've unmuted your line if you'd like to ask your questions to our presenters. Louise, are you there? You might be on mute on your end. Okay, no problem. Let me ask your question for you. Where would the funding come from to purchase the wood stoves? Is it 15% weatherization or direct assistance? Also, where is the funding coming from for maintenance for the wood stove?
You can definitely use LIHEAP funding for clean and tunes and chimney sweeping if the wood stove is the primary source of heating. Those kinds of things are usually a part of your heating assistance benefit. You have the option to make that part of your weatherization assistance, but weatherization assistance has a 15% cap, and you can go up to 25% for weatherization if you get a waiver from our office. But you absolutely can use LIHEAP money for like annual clean and tunes for the wood stoves.
Okay, thanks. And also, I think this question is for Dorothy. Louise was wondering if she can get a copy of the Colville Trip wood contract. Or I think she means Colville Tribe wood contract.
Sure.
Would you mind sharing that with the group?
Sure. And then I don't know if I put my email address or any of my contact information on my slides, did I?
Not sure. You know what, though? We can send out an email to everyone who attended today. And we can send out an email with everybody's contact information, all of the speakers, and then Dorothy, if you want to send a copy of that contract, we'll attach that to the email so everyone can just have a copy.
Okay, I will.
Okay, well, that sounds good. Okay. All right, our next question comes from Adam Bauman. Adam, your line is unmuted if you'd like to ask your question now.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I was just curious. We are a local air district in California, and we have our own wood stove change-out program. And I was wondering, I saw on that slide that the LIHEAP eligible entities were state and tribes and territories. I was wondering if a local air district, which is technically a special district of the state, if that is eligible, or how it works in California. It may already be done through the state somehow.
Yeah, and no, in California, the state agency that you are not eligible to apply to be a LIHEAP grantee. The governor basically gets to decide which state agency applies. It's because technically the primary grantee is the chief executive of the state, which is the governor. So on the governor's behalf in California, the Department of Community Services and Development administers LIHEAP, and they subgrant their funds to local agencies, nonprofits and community action agencies, and sometimes local governments, depending on where you're at. And I know that the state of California has done change-out programs before using LIHEAP funds in partnerships with, at least for certain, in the Air Quality District in Sacramento, because I remember working on that project. So you can feel free to get in touch with me, and I can put you in touch with the folks who run LIHEAP in California, and you can talk to them about another partnership.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks a lot, Adam. Another quick question that I think might be for Julia again, but is there a LIHEAP requirement that stoves funded through the program be installed professionally?
There is a LIHEAP requirement that the grantee ensure that funds are spent effectively, efficiently, and properly. And I would say that that would include having licensed people install things like furnaces and stoves. I'm not sure who that question came from, but if they want to get in touch with me one-on-one, I could provide them with more information.
Okay, and we do have Julia's information up right now. If you immediately want to grab that and send her any follow-up notes. Our next question, let me see if I can unmute your line. Our next question comes from Sonia Guior, and I do apologize if I just butchered your last name. I do apologize. So Sonia, your line is unmuted if you'd like to ask your question. Sonia, are you there? Okay, let me ask her question for her. Where should wood stove change-outs be recorded? And this is a very specific LIHEAP question. Where should wood stove change-outs be recorded on the household report, on the grantee survey, and on the state plan?
Sonia, the question to this depends on whether or not your change-out program is part of your crisis component or part of your weatherization component. Those are usually the two options. If it's part of your weatherization component, then it needs to be recorded in that line item. If it's part of your crisis component, in both the reports there is a sub-item for equipment repair and replacement under crisis, in which case you would report it there. So it depends. You have the option of putting it under either of those line items. It depends on how your program is structured. So if you want to get in touch and tell me more specifically how your program is run, I could give you a better answer. But those are the two options.
All right, thank you. And unfortunately, we are running out of time. We did want to share just one comment from one of our attendees who wanted to share this with the group. This is just to note that the Tribal Healthy Homes Network completed a 4-tribe briquette study last winter, and we should have the results out by spring. And this included a sampling of air quality inside and outside the home, and a lengthy survey of how tribal members responded to using briquettes, such as heat level or comfort. So Gillian, thank you so much for sharing that info, and once you get those results, definitely send them our way and we can share them with the group later on. And if you did have any more remaining questions, please feel free to either email them to me, Benita. You can reply back to the calendar appointment that we sent out, or you can email Yulia or any of the speakers, and again, we will send out an email with all of the speakers' contact information again. Before everybody jumps off, we do just want to ask a couple remaining poll questions, if you don't mind, just to get some general feedback on how the session went. So the first one is, we just want to know, and please feel free to be as honest as you'd like, was this webinar valuable? Yes, there's a lot of information that you plan to use, or somewhat, you've learned a few new things relevant to your work, or no, in some cases, some of the information you may have known already, or know that the information is not relevant to your work. So if you can just quickly answer that question and just let us know, this is helpful feedback for us to improve a future session on the same topic as well. Okay, we've got about 2/3 of the group that have voted. Leave it open for just a couple more seconds. Okay. Okay, so this is great. This is really helpful, especially to Larry and some of the other EPA organizers on the call, how we structured this. Glad to know that this was helpful for a lot of you and that you were able to learn a couple new things. And let me just, we have one more question to ask everyone, just kind of as a follow-up. What would be helpful for you and your organization or your tribe moving forward? Would you prefer to have some outreach materials for residents? Would it be better to have a one-on-one conversation with a LIHEAP staff member or an EPA employee? More information from the tribes and organizations who have done projects like these, or perhaps conduct a resident survey to identify most needed LIHEAP assistance, where that's most needed, or perhaps sample language for including in grant applications or work plans. And for this question, please feel free to choose all that apply. If all the information would be helpful, go ahead and select that, or if there's particular items of specific outreach material, then just let us know. And it just helps us moving forward to provide all of you with the best possible information. And it looks like we've got about 2/3 of the group have voted, and I promise this is the last poll question. Okay, let me close that. Okay, and as you can see, it's kind of evenly split across the board. It looks like all of these tools could be very helpful for our attendees here today on the call. So that'll help us figure out, what kind of relevant technical assistance we can provide in training moving forward in this area. So with that, I just want to say thank you to everyone who attended the webinar today. I know this was a really helpful topic, and we all learned a lot. And thank you again to Yulia, Larry, Susan, and Dorothy for sharing your experiences and discussing policies and just helping us all learn a little bit more about this helpful situation. And if you have any follow-up questions or comments, feel free to email me. Again, my name is Benita. My email address is up on the screen, or any of the presenters once we send out their contact information. So with that, thank you so much for joining today. It was a pleasure to have you. And with that, the webinar is now over.
Great job, Anita.